So I'm coming at things in a little bit of a different area to you guys. I'm not a historian. I'm actually from a technical background, and the reason I'm here is a bit of a strange kind of story, and unexpected for me as you, I guess, is because my journey led me into my undergraduate degree. I was creating real-world environments, and fully expected to go into the gaming industry, creating Merlin's Castle and all sorts of crazy worlds, that sort of thing for games. In fact, I actually found myself working in forensics for a number of years, recreating major crime scenes which were used for court cases. So I did that for 2 or 3 years until the job was murder. So I literally had enough of it after a few years. It's not as glamorous as it sounds. Probably was for 1.5 years, maybe 2 years, and the glamour kind of wears off, and you know, the reality of it is not so pleasant. And I came back to the university and ended up working for the law school. And as we are now, I work with these guys in a team, and we look at historical crime and law. So I find myself here at the conference with you guys, and one of the things that's always intrigued me and part of my journey is really based around. I remember when I was very, very young. I loved the idea of time travel. I saw the old film, 1967 film, The Time Traveller, The Time Machine, and this intrigued me massively, that that you could actually get into this contraption and go back in time and experience what things would have been like at that time. And I suppose that had a very strong residue with me, and it ended up that I've always been kind of interested in history, but from the point of view, if I could be immersed in it, if I could actually experience it, what would have it been like? So my paper, if you like, although I haven't got any paper with me, my paper is entitled Reconstructing History, and it's my journey of how do I reconstruct the history that I've been fortunate enough to be made aware of. So I found this quote which I really like: "History repeats itself, first as tragedy, second as farce." And I really, this had a sort of really frames the way I kind of look at history, because if we don't learn from history, then we are kind of, we are likely to repeat the same mistakes over and over again. And I think we see that, and I think that's something that I find farcical, that we actually don't learn from history. So this is how history is taught. This is how I was taught history when I went to school, and actually this is probably why I was never really thought I was interested in history. It was just a load of dates in a timeline, and it didn't really kind of make a lot of interest to me. I didn't find it that exciting. I never went into history, but as I say, I was interested in the immersion. If I could have actually experienced what it would have been like to be in a Viking invasion, that might have made me more excited. Yeah, more excited about it, especially in a safe way. I could have been in that, enjoying that in Viking invasion, but not getting hurt. That sounds really good. So that's what led me into recreating worlds, and this is how you do it. So on this side you can see that there's a wire frame there, and all of this, the whole world that you can create is modelled. Okay, there's various techniques for modelling, but one of the you can model shapes, and it's very similar to actually modelling shapes in the real world. Actually, if you were going to use a CNC lathe to cut out a shape, you actually work in many ways in very similar fashions in three-dimensional design and drawing. And then, of course, as you made these primitives, primitive shape, you texture them up so that they have the different materials applied to them. You can make wood look like wood and china look like china and everything. And then you apply lighting, which adds shadows, and that gives you that kind of effective illustration of a world. But that's, of course, a world that you look on a computer screen. But to take that one step further, then virtual reality has come along. And virtual reality has given me the opportunity to now actually go into my own worlds in a virtual state. So I put the headset on and I can walk around in the worlds that I've created. So this is much more exciting now, and that's really kind of come on to the, it's more accessible to the home market in the last 2 years at the most, really. And the reason for that is it could be done, but you needed mega computers for the speed of delivery of these 3D worlds. Okay, it's much higher resolution, if that means anything to you, than what you would use on a computer screen, because it's all around you. And one of the problems with virtual reality historically was that it usually made you feel sick. And the reason it did that was because as you moved in a very real kind of way. It's quite fast the way we move, actually. And for computer graphics to be delivered at the speed that they would react as fast as you are moving at that high enough resolution, there was usually a lag. And that lag, when you move, the world's slightly catching up, is the thing that gave you a nausea. It's similar to seasickness. Okay, if any of you are sailors, you'll know that actually seasickness is, I don't know, shall I go into it? Seasickness is the reason we know what seasickness is. The reason we get seasick, okay, is because our body feels like it's been poisoned. Okay, because things aren't quite working the way our brain's expecting them to, and then we're sick because we're trying to get rid of the poison. That's quickly why people get seasick. I wasn't going to say that, but I'll just check it out. Okay, so, but how do I recreate the past? Well, to recreate the past, I have to look at primary source material and some secondary, primary and secondary source material. So, one of the things, or the thing that I'm going to demonstrate for you, I haven't got virtual reality here because of the setup time, but I'm going to show you some virtual reality. And the most recent creation that I've done is to recreate a transporter ship from early 1800s. Okay, would have been on its passage to Australia. We were doing an exhibition on transportation, so that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to immerse the general public in transportation, so they could read the posters, they could hear the talks, but they could put a headset on and feel like what it would have been like to be on a transporter ship in 1830. You've had your sentence, you know, you may have stolen a loaf of bread, and you've been given the option execution or transportation to Australia. Well, that's because you're around about 25 to 27, 30, you're the age that's wanted to go over and work over in Australia, and you're probably going from Plymouth. This is actually a Hulk, so this is a picture I found online. I couldn't find a transporter ship exactly. I did find an artist illustration, but this is a Hulk, and you can see in there, you may be able to see that, you know, this is basically all I had to go on of what maybe a large transporter ship might have looked like. If you were a bad prisoner and you caused problems, you worked your way down the boat, and if you were not causing any problems and you worked your way up, there was more light at the top than there was at the bottom, so it was a slightly nicer place to be than in the bows of the ship. This was one of the better artist's illustrations I could find of what it would have looked like. And I estimated that these cages were roughly 10 to 12 foot square. And by some research I found that actually most of them would house at least 10 prisoners in each of those small spaces. So you can imagine that it would have been very difficult for everybody to sleep at the same time. It would have been very crowded. If you were sick, I can imagine it would have been absolutely awful place to be. You were cooped up in there for the whole journey unless you were sick or caused problems in some way and you'd have been moved. I mean, you can imagine the people around you would have been being sick as well, and you know, the passage would have been rough at times. I'm sure it was horrendous. You would have been, it was male only cages or female only. In fact, most of the transport ships were one sex only. There were some which were both male and female, but mostly they weren't. The female ones, if you had children, then the children went with you. They shared your sentence in a way, but we were empire building, so we wanted women and children in Australia. So you went along too. So keep this picture in mind. I'm going to come back to this picture because I'm going to show you how I went about sort of using that as my, of what I followed to try and recreate, okay? But I'm going to have a slight diversion, so I'm going to show you, because I had a little bit more of showing you the process of how to recreate the past. One thing that we've been working on is to recreate this, which is Tavistock Courts. And Tavistock Courts is one of the oldest courts that's still in existence. Now, I had a primary source here because the court is still fitted out, so I could go in there, I could measure, I could take photographs, and I could use that as my primary source material. This is what it looks like inside. So obviously the judge's bench is up there. There are some, just a little bit higher up, there are some plaques on the wall, and from looking the other direction you can see the gallery still in place there. The witnesses would have been over here. Sorry, the jury over here, the witnesses over there, the defendant right in the middle. It's very theatrical the way it's done, and the defendant basically almost the lowest place that you can be, and these stairs here lead down to the cells down below, and there are doors here to actually get out. So if the judge decided, or if the jury decided you were guilty and the judge sentenced you, that phrase they would use, take him down, you actually went down the stairs. And if he said you were free to go, they open the little door and you're straight out into the free world. Okay, so first part of my process was to map all of that out, to take the measurements, and after we had the photographs, and map out exactly the layout of the courtroom itself, which I can do in 2 dimensions. This was the table here, so the judge would have been up here. This is the stairs coming up, as you can see. So that's where I would start if I was building this. And jumping forward about 4 weeks, this is what it ended up looking like. So that's a recreation there with the textures done and the courtroom sort of all in place. And the idea is that we're going to use this courtroom as an asset where we can maybe train within the law school by setting up mock cases, and you might be working out a case for the defence or the prosecution, and if you're, the academic, then you might be providing the case as a judge.
Well, you've had 15 minutes.
Have I really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I'm going to speed up then. Okay, so going back to the transportation, this is so the final bit. So this will show you as I'd be modelling this, I'd be making from the primitives, I'd make a cell here, and then judging on that photograph that I used, the illustration I used, I found that there would have been round about 12, I've used about 10 cells I think on this, so you can see how those can just be replicated once you've made one from the drawing. So the stairs are in the middle. They're quite key because in that illustration you saw the stairs coming down and the floor lower down. I would know exactly how many steps were on there. All of this came from when I was doing crime scenes, obviously, because all of that stuff is absolutely crucial. So I came up with something like this. This is more or less what you're going to see with the sides added on. So this was the illustration I started with, and in the more or less the same position, this is what it looks like in virtual reality if you were stood there. Well, this is what's been created, so you can see the stairs coming down. This is roughly the same position. Stairs would have carried on further down there, and the cells are about 10 to 12 foot square. I probably even counted the bars, to be honest. Even though it came from illustration, it was all I had to go on. Okay, so when we present this sort of stuff, this is the virtual reality kit. I'd have a tripod either side, so you can walk anywhere within that space, so you can walk around. Now in that particular one, you can only walk in a cell. Okay, when you get to the bars, if you try and go through the bars, you could actually walk through the bars, but you just tend to stop. And if you...
3 minutes, Rob.
Okay, I'll try and speed up. But one of the things that you need to do is you need to be able to move further afield in virtual reality. So with my transport ship, I wanted you to be confined to cells, but be able to move from one cell to another. So we had a teleport system. So you can actually say, I want to go over there, press the button, and you end up over there. But it wasn't enough. What I found was I needed more than that, and so we added voices in the cells, so this will give you an idea. These are 3 scripts that were written by Jim.
Devonport's long-standing residence. And my brother, Lieutenant Prudhoe, my youngest brother, is first mate on this ship taking felons to Australia. He invited me to come and see his quarters, but I wanted to see where they were holding the convicts, to check that their moral welfare was being properly regarded. After all, they are sinners. But there is no chaplain on board. I was shocked when I heard that. They need their moral welfare to be considered as much as their health. They provide a doctor for that. But without spiritual help, what hope can there be they will reform and build new law-abiding lives, unless they learn to acknowledge their sins and repent properly? Poor wretches, they have brought their fate upon themselves by their wrongdoings. But in Australia, they can hope to redeem themselves through hard work and make themselves respectable. I have given my brother a copy of my Sunday school lessons and made him promise to spend every Sunday with them, poor wretches, teaching them to know God and acknowledge their sinfulness so they can begin their new lives afresh.
Who do I blame for bringing me, John Richards, to this pass? That sneak with his Sunday school ways, William Coggin. Oh, he was happy enough to join me and his workmates John Brown and William Vanstone when it came to a few shillings to put in his pocket. But then the vicar caught him spending and preached at him, and his mother cried, and he preached. What? Oh, confessed it all. Stood up in court he did, at the assizes, and told it all. Vanstone didn't help either. Another goody-goody lad going to Sunday school. Well, learning to read and write hasn't stopped him getting a good whipping at least, as well as John Brown. But I get transported for life, because Judge said I am an incorrigible rogue and felon. Pah!
I am Sarah Steer. I've been unfortunate all my days. I only took, borrowed really, a blanket from that brute John the Simonite, but I'm transported for 7 years for it. He would not let me stay another night because I was a penny short. It was so cold, but he found me next morning in the alley and charged me with intending to sell it. And because they say I'm not a good girl and have been dishonest in the past, Judge says it's his duty to rid the West Country of a girl like me, and I must go to Australia and learn to work. I'm sure I would be ready to work if I was offered a proper chance and not mistreated. Just because I am pretty and have a good ankle. Those married women who look so at me, and there'll be that type in Australia. I'll be bound. I am a miserable woman.
So you can see that those,
Literally have to wrap this up now.
yeah, that information comes from what we would say is primary source material, but it's been, scripted beautifully by Judith and voiced by, various people we drag in to give the audio recording, and then we present that to the public. So that's pretty much the end of it, and that's how I created my own time machine. Thank you very much.